Welcome to the Sports Card Lessons Podcast with me, your host, Ken. I'm a retired teacher documenting my story here on the pod, finding teachable moments to share with all of you along the way. Don't forget to hit me up on Instagram at sportscard_lessons. Hit that follow button. And you can also watch these episodes on the Sports Card Lessons YouTube channel. Welcome, everyone. How is everyone doing? Whether you're watching on YouTube or listening to the podcast, please hit the subscribe button and leave some feedback. I'm really excited for today's guest, the first guest of season 2. He's the host of Sports Card Live, Collectibles Live, PWCC Live, and the vice president of business development at Tag Grading Company. Welcome, Jeremy Lee.
Thank you, Ken. It's an honor to be here, but it's a super honor to be the first guest of your season 2. So thank you for having me.
Are you the hardest working guy in the hobby?
Oh yeah, of course I am.
Reading all that, I don't know how you find time to do anything else.
You know, I don't know how I ever had a full-time job outside of the hobby now that I look back, but yeah, I keep busy and I get a lot of work done when my young kids are asleep, starting at about 7:30 my time. So yeah, I don't consider it work. I enjoy everything I do, but yeah, I stay busy. That's for sure.
Nice. And I have to say, I think you may even be the tallest guy in the hobby. So
well, there's my friend Justin, who's sick. He goes by 6'10" Sports Cards on Instagram, who is 6'10", but I'm just a hair under 6'6", so I'm definitely among the taller people. That's for sure.
It's funny. I saw a picture of you and my good friend Rob, sports card therapist from National, and we have a number of pictures of us together, and he always seems to tower over me. He's like 6'1", and I'm 5'8", right? And all of a sudden I look at this picture, I'm like, Rob, are you kidding me? How tall is he? I've never seen anybody tower over him before, right? So yeah, welcome. Really excited to have you on. It's interesting because this is the first time we're meeting, but because I've watched so many of the Facebook Lives and I've listened to you on so many of the podcasts and interviews, you know, I feel like I've known you for years, and I think that's what the hobby does to us, right? We get to know people so well. So I'm probably not gonna, jump out and say, hey, tell me all about the beginning of your collections. I think probably everybody has heard that story before. But just kind of give me, just a quick rundown of where you're at now, as far as, because I know hobby and business are the same. So on your collecting side, where are you at now?
I mean, collecting runs through my blood, Ken. It's something that I've been doing. I can't remember a time of life where I wasn't collecting. Going back to, like Star Wars figures in 1979, whenever that was. So, sports cards started for me. I think the first time I really saw one was about 1979. So I love collecting cards, and no matter what I've been doing in my life, it's always been a part of it. So right now, I love my Hall of Fame rookies, going back through all 4 sports, going back to the beginning of time. But I find that, interests move through, like, wherever whatever I'm really focused on at one given time, or one year, one season, might be different the next year. I'm always, the nice thing about this hobby is that there's always something new to find. You can always discover something that you never knew existed before, whether it's the very rare and creative inserts and parallels from that second half of the 90s, or you want to get into some non-sport, maybe some Hollywood, Swedish and Dutch cards from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Or you want to get into like the hockey inserts from the 2010s, which I love these things. My collection is very broad. I don't collect any one specific type of card or player or team. I collect a lot of different things. So I'm always all over the place, but I'm very organized in it, and I'm always able to find something new. Right now, currently, my focus is on sort of autographed patch cards, hockey for the most part, a little bit of football, and I'm really enjoying that because it's just kind of where I want to kind of build that part of my collection up to just have it represented. And I love the cards. We're very fortunate in hockey, right? Ken, we have very nice patches
Yeah.
with all the colors and all
Usually
the
game
nice
used.
logos.
Yeah. Game used, game worn. Yeah. Yeah.
So I feel like that was a very scattered answer, but that's kind of,
Yeah.
I'm scattered in my collecting, but it's a very organized scatter.
Yeah, but that's the greatest thing about the hobby, right? When you get into collecting, and a lot of the people who jumped in during the pandemic, it was all about the money, right? And I think a lot of those people are past that now. I know I'm one of those people that are past that, and it's so nice to sit back and say, I like that, I'm gonna buy it. Like, I want that for me. I want that in my collection. I don't care if, uh, nobody else in the hobby collects it. If I like it, I'm going to get it, and that's the one thing about the hobby. When you don't care about the money and you all of a sudden you start collecting, you hear this all the time, collect what you love, right? But you start collecting the things that make you feel good. I mean, the hobby, the hobby and you being in the hobby brings on a whole new meaning to the hobby.
100%. I think what resonated most with me when you just said is when you collect just because you love the cards. And I've said this before, even recently, that I can look at certain cards in my collection, or I can see a card on an online platform that I want to acquire. And it can actually, I will have like a physiological response in my body where I will feel it in my stomach, like the butterflies. And then I fixate on, if I don't own the card, I fixate it on it until that, the auction ends and I can actually place my bid and buy it. And then we have that anticipation of the mail day. You go pick up the card from the post office, or it lands at your house, and then you open it up, and then you go through your very personal process of incorporating it into your collection, whether that's scanning it, documenting it, adding it to your Excel spreadsheet, whatever you're doing. I love the whole process, but it's that physiological response that I don't know if, have you ever felt that? Have you ever felt it in your stomach?
God forbid it doesn't show up the day it's supposed to show up. And you're like, what's wrong? It says right here, it should be here today. Where did it go? Where has it disappeared to? Yeah. The first response that I had, I had a submission. We were sending cards to PSA, and it was the first time that I had given the cards to somebody else and said, okay, send these off. And that time they were my prized possessions, right? And we sent them off, and I'm anxious, the grading. I know it's going to take a while. It's expensive, it's whatever. And then the phone call came like 5 weeks later that the cards were missing. And to me, it was like someone just tore the heart right out of my chest. Like, I didn't even know how to feel. And even to this day, right, when I talk about that story, I have that response, I have that feeling. So, when I send cards to PSA, I ensure the crap out of it, right? And then I watch it. Or if I'm sending it, somebody's bought something from me on Facebook and I have to send them that card, I ensure it, and I'm watching it every day. Every morning I get up and I look. So yes, it's almost the same thing as cards coming in, then cards going out. There's something that happens within us when it comes to these cards, no matter what it is, whether it's the excitement of buying it, the anticipation of receiving it, or being nervous to send it off to somebody else that you hope it's going to arrive safely.
I mean, these are our most prized possessions, outside of our children. These are our favorite things that we have. I mean, I don't care about cars.
Yeah.
No car vehicles. I don't care about a car. To me, it's an unimportant possession. They depreciate. So, it really depends what turns your crank. What are you like? Do you like watches? Do you like designer clothing, or just nice clothing? Like, how do you want to spend your discretionary income? What items make you happy? And for collectors, for sports card collectors, it's cards. That's what we love. And when we're waiting for them to arrive, or we're shipping them off, it's like an adoption process when you ship your card off. And even sometimes, I've sold cards that I've owned for a very long time for various reasons over the years. And if it's a card that I've owned for like 20 years, I'm not going to sell it to the highest bidder. No, I'm going to hand select the person I'm going to sell it. And what I mean by that is if I'm at a card show and I've got a card in my showcase and somebody comes up and says, hey, I'm interested in that card over there. And it's a card. This happened with my Mario Lemieux rookie that I had since I was a kid. I had it graded by PSA. It came back an 8, and I eventually acquired a PSA 9 copy. So, I went from a near mint to a mint copy, but my PSA 8 was my childhood copy. Well, when I put it in my showcase to sell it, the guy came up, wanted to buy it. Well, he had to answer a ton of questions before I was letting him walk away with my childhood Mario Lemieux rookie. I want to know, what else is in your collection? How long have you been collecting? How long do you intend to hold it for? I don't want it being passed around and flipped 20 times. Some cards I don't care about.
Yeah.
But this is a card that meant a lot to me. And it was like he had to go through an adoption process to take this card off my hands.
And at the end of all that, did he ask for a discount or did you just pay the price?
I mean, I'll tell you one thing though, Ken. He answered the questions in such a way that the money, it wasn't, I wanted to get money for the card, but it wasn't about the money. It was about where was that card going? So I don't remember how the negotiation ended, but I'll tell you what, because I was so pleased with the collection that card was going into, I would have been willing to give him a way better price than someone who was coming up to buy it just to go sell it later.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in my cases, I set up at shows. In my cases, I have a lot of cards, a lot of slabbed cards, and 90% of those cards all come with a story. Yeah. So, and it's like a similar of what you're saying. So when somebody's buying a card or they ask me about a card, I tell them the story. And every time I tell that story gets better. Right. And until the point where I've got that story down, I can knock it right out and it sounds perfect. And when somebody actually buys the card, I'm like, well, there goes that story. I could just no more story, right? Because the card is sold. So I have a feel. I know what you're saying because when you're in the hobby, everything comes with a story, right? It's all about how you feel. When you get it, it's all about the feeling.
Yeah, and you can't keep all the cards, and I mean most people can't keep them all. So when you do move a card, you just have to be okay with it, let it go. And even that Lemieux I was talking about, I sort of regret selling it, but at the same time, I'm glad that somebody else is enjoying it, and I know it's in a loving home among other wonderful cards. So I'm okay that I don't have it anymore, and I've got other cards with great stories. So it's nice to pass some. It's just a good feeling to see cards go into great collections and be loved by their collector.
Absolutely. So I know you're from Winnipeg. And I have relatives in Winnipeg. So I went out there. I spent some time out there last August after National. I went out there and there was 4 LCSs out there. So I went around to all 4 of them. And one of the interesting things is as soon as I went in, I introduced myself, hey, I'm from the States. I have a podcast. The first thing they say is, you must know Jeremy Lee. Everybody asked, you must know Jeremy Lee, right? I mean, you were like a little bit of a celebrity up there on all these different, every one I went to, they all asked me the same thing, you must know. So did you feel like, I know you're out of Winnipeg now and you left Winnipeg. I mean, was one of those, actually my first question was one of those you owned a local card store there, right? Was one of those, is that store still open?
No. I had a card shop in Winnipeg from 91 to 94. We were called JJ's Sports Cards, and we were on Grant Street and Centennial Street intersection, a small shop right during the junk wax era. And I was in university at the time, and we kind of closed because the hobby was settling down after junk wax. Mm-hmm. And I was just too busy in my university career and getting ready for grown-up life, I guess. So we ended up closing it up. But that shop is no longer there. But I'm certain I know all the shops you went into.
Yeah. Well, I did a whole episode about it. You go back and go back to my season 1. It was
I listened to those episodes. I remember I listened to those episodes on an airplane. So I remember actually, Ken, I have a very vivid memory right now walking through an airport, probably LAX, listening to you. I swear. Yeah.
I went. hopefully I'm going to have a memory walking through LAX listening to you someday, right? That means I'm traveling out there and, heading out to a Burbank show probably, right? Yeah, that's one of my goals. Um, but you took time off, right? So after the LCS, after that, you left that business. You took quite a few years off, right? Before you jumped back in the hobby.
Well, so we closed up the shop, and then the one gap I have in my whole history of life where the hobby wasn't like my number one thing was 95 to 2000, 95 to 99 inclusive. There I was starting my career. I was articling at Arthur Anderson, which is no longer around because of Enron. And I just couldn't focus on the hobby. That said, I still kept tabs on it. I was still buying the odd card, the odd box here and there, going into Joe Daly sports cards in Winnipeg or Superstars in Winnipeg on Portage Avenue, and seeing Ken and Kyle and Joe and Travis at Joe Daly's. So I wasn't as immersed in it as I have been for the other parts of my life. But yeah, that would be the slowest period I had, was that second half of the 90s.
Yeah. And the motivation to jump back in? Was it
Well,
one box of wax? Was it one card that you saw or a show that you went to? What was the draw that brought you right back in?
I mean, I don't feel like I was brought right back in. I feel like I was just sort of, it was a smooth kind of, like, it was a natural thing. Like I still had all my cards in my collection. And then what really it was number one, I was done studying. Number two, I had a job that paid me my first real career money. So I had money now. And then I remember a friend of mine was also sort of into it. So, we talk about it. And he's kind of getting back into it a bit now, like right now. He's a big football fan. And then it was like, I guess a couple rookies came into hockey that I was enamored with. Martin Havlat, Marian Gaborik. I mean, these guys are a good warning against maybe prospecting for the long term. We can get into that a bit maybe, but yeah, it was nothing, no one thing specific. It was just, okay, I've got time, I've got money. Let's go back and buy cards again and catch up on what we kind of were slowed down on.
Nice. And it was, when you jump back in, was it a right full time? I know it's not like a full time job. Were you full blown back into the hobby, like going to shows and things like that, or did it take time before you were working your way up to that? And I don't even know, Winnipeg, did they have shows back then, or did you have to actually travel?
Oh no. Winnipeg had card shows. The Grant Park. So Grant Park is a shopping center, and there's a Grant Park High School with a big gymnasium. The Grant Park card shows were, I was going to those as a kid through the 80s, and they might continue today. I'm not sure, but jumping back in, yeah, I started, and then I moved to Calgary. I moved to Calgary in 2002, and I started. I discovered the card shops that were here. Started buying Topps Heritage Hockey unopened product. It came with gum, chewing the gum, building building the retrofractor set. And I noticed that there were some new technologies being utilized on cards. And it did not take much to suck me in.
Yeah.
And starting in 2000, yeah, I was traveling for work. I was seconded to different cities. I'd go to see an NHL game whenever. I think there was, from 2000 to 2002, I think I went to 13 different hockey arenas to watch games because I was traveling for work. And, just being immersed in the sport, collecting, collecting cards complements being a fan so well. For me, it's kind of reversed though now, where going to a game or watching sports complements the hobby. Like, I like the hobby more than I like the sports themselves.
Yep.
Take it for what it is. I'm honest about that, but it wasn't always that way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I feel the same way. Like I love the sports. And I jumped in when I was a kid, it's funny you should mention the gum, because when I was a kid, I'm not even give the year, but the hockey cards used to come with this great tasting gum in it, right?
Mhm.
And it was really to open it up and chew the gum. The cards were the second. I mean, we're almost second nature. But then before you knew it, you had a whole box of cards, right? And then there's always something. There's always some card. There's always something, and it's the littlest thing that draws you back in. So for me, being a sports fan, right, in the 90s, I started, jumping back in, and I started getting all these cards and their autographs and this and that. I didn't realize at the time, like nobody knew at the time, that they were, basically worthless. But to me, they were great cards, and I still have them. I still have those cards today, and I didn't not get rid of them. So when I jumped back into the hobby again, I had these cards, and I'm like, oh my God, these cards must be worth a fortune, right? And little did I know that they were worth nothing, but they were still my cards. And it's still today. I still, you know, keep them well displayed. I'm still proud of those cards, right?
Well,
Even
that
though the value. So that's all, we're getting all the way back to the value again. Even though the value is not there, it's the cards that make me feel good. It brings me back. It reminds me of a time. Yeah.
But the value is there, Ken. It's nostalgic value.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who cares? Who cares about monetary value on stuff like that? The nostalgic value to me is worth more than the money. I mean, this is your life we're talking about. This is what you love. These are your memories. This is your history. So, nostalgic value. The problem with nostalgic value is that it doesn't transfer to the next person, right? So it's only for you. But that's the beauty in it. It's very personal. So I completely hear it. And there's some cards that they don't have to be in wonderful condition. They can be pretty beat up, but to you, they're just not for sale. Like, why would you sell one of those cards that might have a market value of $20? Why would you sell it for, what's $20 going to do for you? Why would you sell it for $20 when for you, you can carry it with you for the rest of your life and
Yep.
enjoy it every day that you look at it and brings back those memories? That's what the hobby is. And that's where some monetary value does stem from. As you know, if enough people have nostalgic value for that player or that card, or historical value, we see the financial value come with it. But at the end of the day, these are just pieces of cardboard with pictures on them.
Yeah.
And if we enjoy them, that's
Yeah.
there's so much value. There's so much life value in that.
Yeah. It's how they make us feel. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
So I've heard you say many times on many interviews that you gave up your CPA day job after 25 years to work in the hobby full time. Has that taken away from the excitement of collecting it all now that work is hobby and hobby is work?
Not one bit.
Yeah.
Not even one bit. My collecting cards is such a part of my DNA that the fact that I now work with a company that is in the hobby is like it's its own thing. Where there is crossover is that I want to get my cards into the tag. We're talking about tag grading. I want to get my cards into the tag slabs because I just think they present the best.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, and I don't even really care about the condition. I just want them in those slabs. And then, of course, I mean, we can get into what tag is, but
Yeah.
I trust our grading more than any other grading company. So I want my cards in there so I know what the condition is, because I do care about condition, but I don't care about bad condition in many cases.
Yeah.
Some cards, I can go on and on about that. But to your question, no, they don't. The role has not impacted how I love collecting one bit. If anything, it's enhanced it because I'm all in on the hobby.
Yeah, that was kind of my next question. Is has it made it better? Have you with your collecting and your own personal collection, has that been enhanced by your position in the hobby, like the things you do in the hobby? I'm sure there's you have much more access to things that maybe you didn't have before.
Well, you know what, Ken? I think so. So I've got three pillars of the hobby for me: my collecting, my content, and now my role with tag. And so the same way that, my role with tag has affected my collecting, my content has done the same. It's affected. And what effect am I getting at is relationships and people. my show, my Sports Cards Live YouTube show and podcast has opened up the doors to so many amazing relationships and friendships, like our friend Rob Gerard. I mean, if it wasn't for content, Rob and I wouldn't be friends.
Yeah.
Right? You and me, we're starting that right now. It
Yep.
excites me. It's so, but my podcast, my show, Sports Cards Live, has enhanced the hobby because of relationships. Now my role with tag grading is enhancing it even further because I've met all the amazing people at tag. I can't speak highly enough about our team. And then other people through it, collectors. You know, I've spoken to 2 of our customers in the last 24 hours and on the telephone, and it's like, the hobby is a commonality that we share. Collecting is something we have in common. When you have, you know, I like to use the word rapport. Rapport is very important to me because it's something that it just means that you get along and you share an energy. Well, the best way to build rapport in life is to find something in common with that person. It's a great sales strategy if you're in sales, you know.
Yep.
Find that commonality, build the rapport. That person will like you, you'll like them. I mean, but rapport to me is a state of mind. It's a state of being. It's a state of friendship. And, you know, being able to have that commonality, build rapport with people, enhancing friendships and relationships, you know, that's one of the best parts about the hobby. So my role with tag has just enhanced it that way for me.
Well, it's a great segue. I mean, since we're talking about tag, do you have an update for us on what's going on with tag?
Sure. I mean, it's interesting. So I asked you before we started when this would drop, and you said next Thursday. So today is what, Friday, January the 13th, if you don't mind me saying that.
That's fine.
And I can tell you that, so we've been working very hard at tag to move us from phase 1 of our launch to phase 2. Phase 1, we're calling early adopter. I kind of call it like a pre-launch where we're not taking in many cards very deliberately. You know, but tag has been building the business, the technology for 10 years. It's a lot of work, a lot of investment, a lot of meticulous activity has gone into it because we're building an automated machine learning AI system. So it's one thing to do that, but then you're going to now go customer facing, take in cards and test your process. Our technology is good. Our process, we didn't know, you know, we have it set up. It's a very streamlined. It goes from A to B, intake to shipping, but we hadn't been tested that way. So we want to make sure that we're doing that our process is good. And we've been testing it very, very meticulously since really the beginning of September of 2022. And we are about to move into phase 2, or this is my language, not tag's language. Let me be clear on that. In my view, we're about to move into phase 2. And I think by the time this podcast drops, we will have let the hobby know by updates to our website, emails to our email list, and likely some social media postings as well. So that's the update. I know it's kind of cryptic because we haven't sent out this message, but if we recorded this a week later, we could talk much more clearly about what the updates are.
Okay, well, at least we're here at the cutting edge, right?
Can I tease you? I can give you one. One
Okay.
of them, which you will know by now when this drops, is that we are now accepting pack pulled, manufacturer authenticated autographs. So up until now, we haven't done that. But by time this podcast drops, pack pulled autographs from 2000 forward will be something that we're accepting for grading.
And will that include the the thickness of the card too? Like some of the like with an RPA,
So
so
only
it'd
up to
just be
50,
the card.
Yeah, only up to 55 point.
Okay.
Thicker cards up to like 180 points. So your typical patch, auto patch, RPA, and that. We are endeavoring to have those within the cards that we can accept, like by the end of the year. Again, this is my hope. It's not like easy to do. The biggest challenge with those is the edges. We have to make sure that our image capture can pick up the edges and that our technology can analyze and appropriately pick up the defects, assess them, and then produce our grading report and the final and the grade as well. So we're going to get there. It's high up on our list of priorities.
The 8 subgrades for that now that comes as a separate report. That's not on the slab itself, correct?
That's right. So there's much more than that on the grading report. So we are all about transparency. TAG feels that the hobby has been well underserved, history to date, with no explanation of why your card gets the grade that it gets. So, with the big incumbent companies, thinking about, say, PSA as an example, you get no indication as to why your card gets the grade it does. With Beckett Grading Services, you do get 4 subgrades, but it doesn't tell you where on the surface your card was penalized, or what corner was penalized, or where upon the edges, or how the center, but how bad is what are the measurements of the centering. With TAG, we have on our slab, we have a QR code. So I'll just show you right now. Here's one of our slabs, fully transparent, just like our grading reports are, just like our grading. But for ease of display, I'm going to put it against a nice black background and show you. So we have our QR report, our QR code right there, which within it also shows the score that your card got by our system on a 1,000 point scale. If I can just maybe show that up closer. So this Connor McDavid precious metal gem scored an 859 out of 1,000, which translates to an 8.5. If you scan this QR code, it brings you directly to the digital image and grading report. We call it the DIG report, digital image and grading. And on there's a ton, it's information overload, to be honest. There's a ton of information for someone who is really data driven. I think there's like 73 different metrics that the card is graded on. And then it all rolls up to the centering, edges, corners, and surface grades. But instead of only being 4, you get 8, front and back. When I started to really think about this, it doesn't make sense to me that centering gets 1 grade, because the back of the card is completely exclusive from the front of the card. Yep. So how do you meld that into 1 number? So we said, we're not going to tell the hobby that 75% of the centering grade should be for the front and 25 for the back. That's a very arbitrary sort of approach. So we said, we'll just show you both, and you can decide what's more important to you. So we don't have subgrades on our slabs, but they are certainly on the digital image and grading report, and you're going to get a front and a back for all 4. And then you're also going to get the precise measurements of the card. Today's cards should be 2.5 by 3.5 inches. We give you those grades to, I think it's the 1,000th of an inch on each dimension, which I think is a wonderful thing. And then we also, if you kind of go through our report, you also get the exact centering. So, if is it 50-50 or is it 50.1 to 49.9? We give you the exact centering. So, and then you can look and see what the centering score was. And we give you a full surface report where all the defects are. It's comprehensive, Ken. It's very comprehensive.
It sounds it. Do you think, too, I mean, just listening to you explain that, do you think this higher level grading, moving forward, I would have to think that say a tag 9 and a competitor 9, that the tag would be worth more money. I mean, just be more valuable because it's been graded at such a higher level and not at a level of another company that doesn't, like you said, doesn't even give you any subgrades or any rhyme or reason why your card got a 7, 8, a 9, or a 10.
Yeah. I mean, my first comment is that's what we mean by higher level. So to me, more accurate, because we are first of all, we're providing full transparency. So you never have to ask yourself when you get your cards back with tag, why did it get this grade? You can hone right in and see exactly why it got that grade. And I mean, that's revolutionary in the hobby. And I think it's just something that the hobby should expect. And we're providing that. It's really important to mention, I want to mention this, that just because we are automated / computerized / AI / machine learning grading, we are not a more difficult grader than any other grading company out there. We've simply taken the industry standards for grading that have been, and our senior grader has 9+ years as a senior grader with PSA. His team are experienced graders, so we know, and it's funny, I call them graders. We have professional card graders on staff, but they don't grade the cards. So, they are overseeing the process and making sure that the cards are being handled properly and all this. So we are simply taking the existing industry, the generally accepted grading standards, and applying automation to them. So back to your question. I mean, yeah, my thoughts, Ken. So we also have different, like you can say, okay, let's say a 9. Let's say a tag 9. A tag 9 is going to have a 50-point spread out of 1,000 points before it gets to a 10, or a tag 8 before it gets to 8.5 is going to cover 50 points on the 1,000-point scale. So if it's the lowest of the range, you have a weak tag 8. If it's the highest, it's going to be a strong tag 8. So is the strongest tag 8 going to sell eventually for more than an average or any old PSA 8 or BGS 8 or the other companies? I think the answer is going to be yes, because you know what you're getting. You know that you're getting consistent grading. Our system will spit out the same grade for the card 1,000 out of 1,000 times. Well, I say the same grade. We also are building in like a 4-point cushion. So, it might get a 967 one time. The next time it might get a 971 or 4 points either way. There's minor things that can happen, or dust or whatever it may be, but we've tested it. You're going to come in very close. Whereas with the human grading companies, you can send in a card. I once sent in a card, came back to one of the grading companies, came back a 5.5. I took it out, sent it back in, and again, it came back a 9.5. I mean, that's a 400 1,000ths. That's a 40% change. Where with us, you're going to be like, 0.04% differential. Yeah. So our system's very consistent. And I do believe that in time, the hobby will realize that a human grade is simply an opinion, whereas with tag, you're getting more of a scientific assessment of the condition of the card.
Do you think this is the future of grading? Like right now, you're at this company, your tag is creating, raising the bar here. Just where other companies like the PSA, the BGS, and all these other companies out there, that they may have to, change what they're doing at some point. I mean, it sounds like you guys have broken through, like 10 years in the making, that you've done something that probably a million other people have thought of and were never able to do, right? So is this kind of the beginning of something new?
Oh, of course it is. I mean, to me, there's no doubt about it. The world is always evolving around us. Technology is always evolving around us in every industry. It's only natural that the sports card hobby evolves as well, as it has been since it started in 1910, really, when cards were inserted with cigarettes. We don't see that anymore. Cigarettes aren't even really a thing anymore. I know they are, but that's, how many people smoke it these days? It's much fewer than it was. The world is always evolving, Ken, as you would well know. You're an experienced guy. You've been a teacher. I mean, things are always evolving, and it's only natural that this would too. So yeah, I think that now will other grading companies adapt as well? I mean, we have some pretty good patents at tag. So I don't know how or what they'll do. I'm sure they'll find a way to do something, I would expect. But yeah, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, and for myself as a collector, like I fell in love with tag the moment I saw it. And then I fell more in love with tag when I traveled to their offices last March and saw that, wow, not only do I love what they're doing, but this is a very professional company. I mean, these are seasoned business people with a very strong board of directors who the company's accountable to. And the response we've had so far from not only collectors who have our slabs, but from the industry insiders, the powerful people in the hobby, is nothing short of everyone that I've come across loves what we're doing, and they recognize that, yeah, this is the future. For a company like PSA that has so 10 plus million cards slabbed out there, I mean, I don't know what they would do to not sort of compromise the values of the cards that are already out there, because they wouldn't be as precisely graded as the new ones if they moved into a system like ours. So
Mm.
I don't know what their strategy will be, but they're smart people over there. They've been around a long time. I'm sure that they'll figure something out.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I know exactly what you're saying. Like, I have cards that were slabbed 20 years ago, right? And I think to myself, here is this card's a 9 and it was slabbed 20 years ago. Is it possibly in today's standards it would be a 10, or would it be an 8? Like I have no idea. But if I had a grade on this, or something I could look at to know exactly why it graded the way it did, and it's something that the human eye or something I could see on that card, then I would be like, okay, I'm not going to, you know, break this card open and send it back or send it to somebody else to get graded, right? Which I think will, the future of the AI grading, and these reports, I think will stop a lot of people from busting cards open, breaking slabs open and sending them. Or it could mean like a big influx too, right? People taking all these PSA slabs that they've had slabbed over the last 15 years and break them all open and send them to you guys, right? Because they
Well,
feel that,
yeah. I
you
mean,
know,
it's funny you say that, because I think when we first came out, some people were saying, "Well, yeah, what a great way to kind of pre-grade your cards for the other companies." But to me, that's just backwards. I mean, it makes more sense to me to find the nicest card you can for a grade in a manual, human, opinion-based grading company slab, and then move it into tag and see what it really is. And
yeah.
then now, and when it comes to resale at the higher levels, I think that, when we have collectors, I'm certainly a collector. We have investors. People invest in sports cards. I'm an investor by consequence, because I've had cards for 40 years that have gone up in value. So hey, good for me. A card I bought for $100 20 years ago is now worth $1,000.
Yeah.
That's a pretty sweet
Yeah.
sports card to have. I think that the serious money out there that is in the hobby is going to much prefer a tag graded card to any other human card, because they know what they're getting. There's none of this, well, the guy had a bad day, or
Mm.
they hit their quota for tens that day, or whatever sort of perceptions are out there on how the manual human opinion grading companies work. With us, there's no opinion.
Yeah.
It's a system that is based on a very, a 10 years in development system to assess your card. And I mean, I believe in it so much, Ken. Like, listen, I have a very comprehensive collection of cards that are encapsulated in PSA, mostly PSA, a lot of Beckett slabs as well. And despite that, I still think that tag is the best. There's no doubt in my mind that tag is the best at grading cards of any of the companies.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
of course I want my cards in there. I want the most accurate grading I can possibly get.
And it's not an opinion, right? I mean, that's
No,
really what it comes down to. That's why people break the slabs open and keep resending cards back in, because it's an opinion of whoever's looking at the card that day, whether it's PSA, BGS, any of the other companies. Where for you, if I send a card into tag and I get it back, if I break it open and send it back, it's, unless I damaged it opening up, it's going to come back the same exact grade. There's no.
exactly. Yeah. Our grading system doesn't have a bad day. Our grading system is never hung over. Our grading system never got dumped by its girlfriend the
Yeah,
day before.
yeah,
Our grading system isn't getting paid, $18 or $20 an hour. Our grading system, it's indifferent
yeah.
to who you are, what card is in it, etc. So to me, it is the way of the future. I know the hobby is very adverse to change, and there's a lot of people that have a lot of vested interest in the existing grading companies, because there's a lot of value tied up in those cards. One thing about us is we're not doing cards from 2000 or from prior to 2000. So we're only doing cards 2000 forward at this time. And so I think that's a big differentiator and between us and say PSA and Beckett, where they have a lot of cards and slabs from before the year 2000. And so, we're not really going to, at this point anyway, we're not going to sort of show the hobby how those cards really should grade relative to those other companies. So that's a nice thing, I guess. But for 2000 forward, yeah, we're going to really be able, and we'll eventually move back in time into the 90s and the 80s, and we'll see how far we get. But we have other priorities right now too.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that update.
Oh, my pleasure.
So I know you have a collection, or somewhat of a set, I would say, of Panini Smash Hits, the music cards, as well as movie cards too. Um, I discovered the Smash Hits at National last year, and I bought a few last year. And since then, I've completed a number of sets. I have a number out being graded now. And my question to you is, why do you think that the music and the these cards are not as popular as sports cards? And do you think that'll change? Do you think that the music and the movie cards will start to gain some traction more than they've had so far?
Yeah, fun question for me because I love those cards, and I've been collecting music and Hollywood cards now for several years. Going back to the 50s, I have a few. Like, I have a nice Charlie Chaplin card from 1930 something or other. I just pulled up my images on my phone here. Like, here's my Charlie Chaplin from 1930, Jay Milhoff. I mean,
Oh, wow.
look at how awesome that is.
And
Like,
it's
that's just
graded.
a
Yeah.
wonderful historical piece.
Mm.
I think there's a couple reasons why they haven't taken off like sports cards have yet. Number one, for the most part, at least the cards I'm interested in aren't produced in America. They're produced in Britain, or they're produced in Sweden or in Denmark. You've got the Swedish Samlarsaker series, you've got the Dutch series, you've got a lot of these British cards like the one I just showed you. Ogden's 1924, Ogden's William Shakespeare.
Wow.
Like, how cool. Like, I think about music, Hollywood, and historical figures. Those are kind of the three categories outside of sports. So that's the first thing. Not a lot of production of those cards that ever caught on were done in North America. Panini made the Smash Hit series. Panini at the time was an Italian company. I mean, they still are, but they didn't have Panini America back then. I think they did. Maybe I shouldn't say that. Maybe they did, but they weren't something that was like at all of the corner stores where you'd go to, the 7-Elevens and that sort of thing. So I think that's a part of it. You also have to consider that collecting cards is something that really caught on with young children originally. Sure, there were adults that did it too, but back in the day, even up to the 80s, it was a kid's hobby. And I don't know that kids really cared as much about who was singing the songs or who was, who was acting in the movies versus watching the sports that they were also playing, So I think that might be a part of it as well. I think there's huge potential for them because music it's a cultural phenomenon. Everybody listens to music. Like, everybody listens to music. Not everybody watches sports.
Mm-hmm.
You get into your car or a car, there's music playing. You get into the elevator, there's music playing. Music is in the background everywhere we go. So I think there's a ton of potential for music cards. What, like the Rolling Stones and the Doors and Jimi Hendrix. I mean, these are the goats of music. So I love them. I think they're a nice complement to our sports cards.
Yeah. And I think back too. So as I got involved in these, the earliest back I have is 87, but I just think back as a kid too, it was such a big deal, the music, and I know we're close in age. I'm a little bit older than you, but going to the record store, going down like on a new record was being released, to go get the record, the album, and go home, and then it went to cassettes and then CDs. But it was always a big deal. I mean, in the car, right? You always had, as a teenager in high school, you always had to have the stereo with the music blaring, right? I mean, it's like a rite of passage, right? So there's a lot. When I discovered, these Panini, I had no idea Panini had Smash Hits. When I discovered them, and I'm looking at them, and as I'm looking at, the artist, I'm singing their song in my head, And I'm like, oh yeah, it's all over. just let me have them all. Just put them all. Give me a deal. And yeah, now I find myself buying a ton of these, and I from people from Great Britain and Egypt and all over, like now all over the world. I'm gonna having this stuff is being shipped to me from all over. So now I've reached beyond, right? Beyond, the United States or my area, and the stuff is coming. And I say to myself, like, it's making me feel this good. I'm sure there's people out there who just don't know they exist yet, right? I mean, maybe
Exactly.
they just don't know they exist yet. Like that card you see at a show, you didn't know you needed it until you saw it. Now I want it, right?
Well, it's nostalgic as well, just like we were talking about with sports cards. I mean, I recently, and I put this out on my Instagram, I did a little short video. I discovered that the movie Anchorman has some cards. And I thought, where do you get these? Well, you had to buy a special edition Blu-ray called the Mahogany Edition, and it comes with a pack of cards that has the 12 card set in it. I'd never seen these before. Somebody posted them on Twitter last week. I saw them. I found out where they were from. I went onto Amazon, bought the Blu-ray. It's going to come on Monday, so I'll have it by the time this drops, and I'm going to have my Anchorman cards. It's nostalgic for me. I
Yeah.
remember going to the movie with friends. I remember watching it. I remember seeing it 2 or 3 times. Like it's the same thing as driving in the car. I remember driving in the car in the 80s, listening to Billy Joel. Well, of course I want a Billy Joel card. Like, come on, who doesn't, right? If you were listening to that. If you were, I remember when Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction came out. I was in grade 9 or 10, listening to that album, driving my first car. Of course I want a Guns N' Roses card. It takes me back to those days. Just like my 1985 Mario Lemieux rookie takes me back to going to the cart, like watching him play, the best player since Gretzky, and buying my first Lemieux card at the LCS in Winnipeg at ABD cards for 25 cents. Like, it's all nostalgia. We love those innocent times when before we had responsibility, and taking us back to then is just a way, I think, that we psychologically keep ourselves mentally healthy and balance out life. Life is not easy. Life isn't easy as an adult. No matter who you are, you've got responsibilities, and so yeah, I
And
think
these
it
are a
comes back
vice.
to nostalgia.
These are like a vice, right? Like everything else, right? It's a nice release from
Yeah,
everyday life.
100%.
We didn't even get to touch on hockey, but I think we'll do that in the next interview, right? The next
Sure.
time I have you on. But last question to you. Your opinion, state of the hobby.
I mean, I know. Listen, I'm a glass half full person in life, so I think I'm a glass half full person in the hobby. I think the hobby right now is the strongest it's ever been. So why would you say that, Jeremy? I mean, come on, the hot cards are down 50% since 2021. Well, here's why. The strength of the hobby is not measured on what cards are worth. The strength of the hobby is measured on activity being involved, volume, how many people are into the hobby at any given time. And I think that when the hobby was peaking, it was somewhat unhealthy because things were just going crazy. We had a lot of people coming in who were just looking to make a quick buck. They weren't true collectors. They weren't the end user. So right now, after all that, some people stuck around. So we grew our end user base in the hobby. The foundation is very strong now because it's bigger than ever. There may be fewer people participating now than there were a year and a half, 2 years ago, but those weren't the right people for it. So the hobby right now, I believe, with the people that we gained through the pandemic and the original collectors we had, I mean, they're still all here, most of them, unless they passed away, and that happens all the time, doesn't matter when. The hobby, I believe, is as strong as it's ever been, and it's evolving. You now have tag grading. You can actually, we actually have a real accurate grading company for the first time ever. It's like, I don't know what the future is going to hold in terms of Fanatics coming in and Panini losing their licenses. And I mean, all this, who knows what's going to happen with that, but state of the hobby, it's more enjoyable than ever. There's more people in it. We all have more friends through the hobby than we ever had before, especially if you're involved in social media or you go to card shops, you attend trade nights. The hobby has gotten so much more innovative, not just grading with tag, but other other innovations breaking, the live shopping experiences, more and more platforms, which, you know, has its pros and its cons. I just think that the hobby is, it's so much, it's a lifestyle. That's one of my catchphrases. The hobby's a lifestyle, but it truly is a lifestyle. We are a true subculture. And yeah, I mean, I'm always bullish on the hobby, but I'm probably the most bullish now.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. You know, I set up at I'm a dealer at shows, and I've noticed these last few shows, the strength of the shows, the foot traffic, the sales at the shows, you know, what's going on at the shows. And to me, that, you know, it's just a barometer of you know, just my little area, right? My little area here. But I talk to other people that are going out to these bigger shows, which I hope to get out to this year, and they're saying the same thing, that you know, the shows are really strong. So I mean, with the shows are strong, the hobby is strong, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
100%. I mean, the first Burbank show, which was last August, was an unbelievable show. I mean, it blew people's minds away. The Toronto Expo that I was set up at in November was the best expo I'd ever been to, and I've been setting up there twice a year for
Yeah.
17 years. It was unbelievable. I had my best show there as a vendor.
Mhm.
As a buyer, I wasn't able to buy as many great cards because I was so busy doing deals at my own booth. But the best show I'd ever had from a vendor perspective, by about 40%.
Mhm.
And now we have the next Burbank show coming up in Ontario, California, Super Bowl weekend. I'll be there with Tag. I'll also be there as a collector. I mean, I think it's going to blow people's minds away. So you never know what can happen in the future, but I'm excited for 2023. You know, the other beautiful thing about where cards are at right now is that more and more collectors are able to buy cards relative to a year and a half ago because the prices have come down. So
Yeah.
I mean, how wonderful is that? The people who are not happy with the hobby, who are the most vocal and setting some of the narrative on social media, are people who their entry point was 2021 or late 2020. So yeah, they may not financially have done as well because they bought in at the peak.
Yeah.
But if you've been in the hobby for longer than a minute, and by a minute I mean 3 years, you're loving where the hobby's at right
Yeah.
now. So
Yeah. Absolutely. So
yeah.
besides Burbank, what's what other shows will you be doing? What other big shows do you do?
Well, I mean, I've always done the Sport Card Expo in Toronto, which is always twice a year. Usually this year it's April 20th to 23rd, and then it'll be in November again. I love that show. That to me is the best show in the world.
Yeah.
The National. I love the National.
Yeah.
I've missed
Yeah.
one National since I think 2006 or 7. So I think I've been to the last 17 Nationals, whatever that math is, minus one. Now the expo expanded out to Edmonton, which is just north of me. So I'll be doing that show. That's in May 5th to 7th this year. And I've done that. That show kind of took over from a prior version that was called the Summit. I've done that since its inception. And then the Burbank show, the Union Marketplace show in Del Mar. I'll be doing that with Tag. And you know, I go to all these shows as a collector. What else is there? What am I missing? The Mint Collective, of course, coming up in Las Vegas at the end of March. I was at the inaugural version of that last year, had a great time. I'll be back at that this year. So, I mean, that is co-produced by Collectible, a company that I have a professional relationship or a contract relationship with out of New York. They're the fractional ownership company. I do show for them most Sundays, sometimes on Tuesdays. So, yeah, I mean, I love being at card shows, Ken, because that's
The
where we get
busiest guy in the hobby, right?
yeah, well, at a card show, now you're able to pick up a card, look at it. You're actually meeting other collectors.
Yeah.
You're strengthening relationships with people you already know. Like
Yeah.
being at a card show is my favorite environment in the world.
Yeah. I 100% agree with you. Absolutely love it. And I get a weekend that comes up and there's no card show. I'm like, really? I'm like, okay, maybe the next state, maybe 2 states. Well, it is 160 miles. Like if I left at 4:30 a.m., you know, I mean, that's kind of how I feel. At my mentality of just love being at card shows.
Me too. It's the best.
Jeremy, thanks for coming on. I'll definitely see you at National. It's possible I may be in Toronto in April. I've been talking on the pod about wanting to drive up there. It's within driving distance of where I am, just to drive up there and attend that show. So I may see you there. We'll be in touch if
Well,
I go up there.
Let me invite you to the Toronto Expo. Let me invite you to talk to our friend Rob Gerard, the sports car therapist. You guys come up together, your whole Wolfpack crew. Let's get the whole Wolfpack up to the Toronto Expo. I promise you guys will have a good time. I hosted dinner on the Thursday night. I've been doing that for over 10 years now. I don't pay for everybody's dinner, but I organize and invite everybody out.
I invite you.
Yeah. So yeah, come on up. We'd love to have you. That'd be wonderful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Jeremy, again, thank you so much for being on.
Thanks for having me, Ken. Had a great time.
Take care.